Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Dela's's Voice. As always, I am blessed and I feel so fortunate to have this platform where I can bring you information, inspiration, and motivation for change, wellness, and recovery. I am fortunate to meet fantastic individuals who, through living their passions, bring this world so much positivity. They impact other people's lives. They bring a message of hope. Today's fantastic superhero is Dr. Deandrea Matthews. Dr. D is an author, an international speaker, a community leader, and educator. Most recently, she was awarded one of the top 100 educators award by the Global Forum for Education Learning. Please help me welcome Dr. Deandrea Matthews on Dela's's Voice. Dr. D, hello.
Hello, everyone.
So nice to have you here. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
It's fantastic to have you.
We encourage you to share with your friends, your family, and let them know that their adversity can be the best part of their story as well.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So today's topic, adversity can be your strength. And so many times we can blame our adversity for our limiting beliefs, for what's blocking us in our lives. And you're going to prove us wrong today. You're going to show us how we can use our adversity to be our strength. But I want to first start by getting to know you a little bit. And I want our audience to get to know where you come from, how you started, how you got here, and just to get to know you a little bit more.
Certainly. Well, I am a native Detroiter. I'm a girl from the U.S., born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and grew up, again, in the urban area, graduate of public school system. I have experienced so much in life. We'll get to the adversity part of it soon, but again, a girl from a large city, making it on her own pretty much. I am the mother of 8 and the grandmother of 5. So probably doesn't look like it. We have a blended family. I have 5 biological children and 3 bonus children. So we have lots of love all around us. I am the founder and CEO of Alden Publications, an award-winning hybrid publishing company that is accredited by the Better Business Bureau and a member of the Independent Book Publishers Association. I am also the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for an urban research university here in Michigan, as well as being the president of the Virginia Park Community Investment Associates and also the senior pastor of Visions International Ministry. So those are all the different hats that I wear. And you can see that I'm quite the busy woman, but I try to wear it well and make it look good.
You certainly are wearing a lot of hats, and my hat's off to you because you do it so well and you do it so graciously and with a smile on your face. You must be enjoying every single one of those roles, Dr. D. There must be part of your passion as you do them. I just can see that you put a lot of love into every single one of those roles.
I do. And you're right. A lot of it is because of my passion. I would probably not do as much as I do if it wasn't for the passion behind it. I love working in the community where I serve on the nonprofit as president. It's the community where my family has been since 1964. So again, being active in that community is very important to me. Obviously, my role as senior pastor, I care about people. And of course, my passion project is as an author and publisher. So I really enjoy that work. But then, what I've been doing as far as education is long-term, almost 25 years now in education. So definitely helping people. Again, a lot of times people from economically and educationally disadvantaged backgrounds. So people, again, from the city of Detroit, a lot of times from similar situations to how I grew up, helping them to overcome, helping them to realize their dreams and accomplish their goals.
How did life start for you, Dr. D?
Very good question. So I grew up, actually, I was raised by my grandparents. I grew up in a two-parent home. My grandmother and grandfather were both in the home with me. My parents were close by. We were a close-knit family. Grew up with better than average uh, upbringing, I could say. And at only 20 years old, I married my high school boyfriend. We had gone to prom together. We had been dating for a few years, and I just knew we were going to grow old together. However, when I was 9 months pregnant with our son, he comes home from work one day at 3 in the morning, packs his bags, and leaves. No explanation, no nothing. He abandoned me in my most vulnerable moment, left me with no job, no money, and no hope for relationships. So from that point, again, my heart turned hard. I had dealt with unforgiveness. I dealt with bitterness. I was angry. And what is one of my best assets now, which is my smile, I even lost that and hadn't even realized it. So again, coming from that place where I had, again, lots of hopes and dreams and wanting to do so much, finding myself in that situation where I was at probably the lowest point of my life at that point. So moving from there and building, again, trying to get a better job, continuing my college education because I hadn't finished my first degree at that time, trying to finish my college education, taking care of small children, trying to get better employment to take care of my family. It was lots of things that I had to overcome. Was on public assistance at one point because, again, when he left, I didn't have a job. I was 9 months pregnant. It was a little difficult. So overcoming lots of hurdles to be able to get to where I am today.
You're not the only one, obviously, right? A lot of people can relate to the story you said, right? You told right now. A lot of people have been in really hard situations, having to come out of struggles. And so how did you get out of that sticky spot? I want to say, how did you get out of that?
A lot of it had to do with mindset at that time. It was all about mindset. So you may have heard this story about an egg, a carrot, and a coffee bean. If you haven't, I'll tell it. But if you have, just bear with me. You'll hear it again, maybe from a different perspective. But when boiled in hot water, an egg turns from liquid to hard boiled. In life, there are people who, when things get hot, turn from having, again, a heart of flesh to a heart of stone, hardened from pain, trials, and suffering, similar to what I just told you about the bitterness and the unforgiveness. And then you have the carrot. When the carrot is uncooked, it's hard. You could tap it on the counter and it makes some noise. But if you boil that carrot in hot water for too long, it turns to mush. And a person like that carrot can start out really tough, but over time become silenced from staying in hot water for too long. And a lot of people find themselves in that situation as well. But the last one is a coffee bean. Unlike the egg or the carrot, the coffee bean is the only one that, when placed in hot water, does not change itself, but changes its environment. Now, I've been all three, and you can think about the various situations in life, and I've only told you one, but if you think about the various situations, whether it's having that heart that turned from a heart of flesh, just hopeful and full of love, to dealing with bitterness, unforgiveness, pain, heartache. You can also think about being in what I refer to as a hot mess for too long. We've found ourselves in some situations like that as well, where our voice was silenced. We felt like we weren't heard and that we did not matter. But today, I stand before you as the coffee bean, chocolate brown and a little round, but I am the coffee bean. And what that means is you can take your experiences, you can take everything that you've gone through and change your environment, transforming, again, the things that you've gone through into the best part of your story. I knew that in order to become the person I wanted to be, in order to get the jobs that I needed to take care of my family, I could not stay stuck in that situation. So it was all about mindset and about how I chose to look at myself, not as the victim, not as less than, not as, being upset or thinking about what people would say because I needed to be on public assistance for a moment. None of those things matter. It was the next step and really focusing on what needs to be done next in order for me to get closer to my overall goal.
That sounds like a lot of work, right? It sounds like a
Yes, it
it sounds
definitely
like
was a
a lot
lot
of
of work.
work.
It did not happen overnight.
No.
Yes.
And I can vouch for that I have had to rise above my struggles and the adversity I've had in my life, and it didn't come overnight. And it doesn't happen just like that. It takes a lot of work. So what was the
Yeah.
first step, Dr. D? And I wanna ask you, please go as deep as you like or not. It doesn't matter. This is your story. But I know that a lot of people are connecting with this right now. What was the first thing you did to get yourself out of that mindset into this new mindset of rising above?
So the first thing that I did was I had to be intentional. At the moment that all of that was going on, I was in my second year of college. So a lot of people around me probably expected me to drop out, probably expected me not to finish my
Sure.
degree. But I said, okay, this is what I know I need to do. This is what I need to focus on in order to accomplish this next milestone, which was completing my bachelor's degree. So I made, again, being very intentional, I made arrangements for childcare. I found relatives who could keep my children for very little, money, being able to barter some services. Again, being very intentional so I can continue to go to school and complete that degree. Now, it took me 5 years instead of 4 years, but I got it done. But it took, again, that network, that support team, having people around you to be able to do it. But it first started with me being intentional and saying, this is what I want to do and need to do first. So we just talked about step number one that helped me to come out of that situation, which was really being intentional. Step number two for me was being proactive. I was always a shy and quiet girl. So a part of my evolving was being proactive in learning how to speak up for myself. So, speaking up to tell other people what I need, speaking up to tell other people what I'm going through and how you might be able to help. And I do still struggle some days with asking for help, but I do understand that it's important to be able to receive what other people want to be able to pour into your life, particularly in those down moments. So, the other thing is being proactive and not necessarily waiting until someone, well, now they can Google you and find out things about you. But also, if there's some unflattering things about your story, instead of waiting for someone to find out what those things are, be willing to talk about it yourself. It's almost as if you're in a job interview and there's something, there's, let's just say, a gap in employment, rather than have them guess as to what happened during that time, go ahead and be proactive and say, yes, XYZ happened. Yes, you'll notice that there's a gap in my employment or whatever the case may be. Being proactive means giving information up front, not letting people make their own assumptions, but telling them this is what's going on with me and not being ashamed of it. Just owning that part of your story. So that would be number two, being proactive. So number one was be intentional. Number two was be proactive. Are we ready for number three?
I have one comment here, Dr. D. This takes a lot of courage. What you just said about being proactive and owning up to the mistakes you have made takes a lot of courage. Just
Yes.
putting that out there.
Yes, absolutely. It does. And again, for me, it didn't happen overnight. So please understand that this is not something I just woke up and threw on my Superwoman or Wonder Woman cape and said, let's just go and do it. This was a process over a number of years for me. So again, this is where I am now, and I can look back and talk about it, but it did take time. So don't feel like it's something that you just have to rush out and do. It's a part of the process of evolving.
Okay, we're ready for number three. Number one, be
All right.
intentional. Number two, be proactive.
Yes.
Number three.
Yes. Number three is be prepared. So another part of my journey was multiple jobs. And I say that because, again, as a mother raising small children, I had to make some difficult choices. So I started out in education in 1996. I started out at a place called Vistas Nuevas Head Start. I was working again with bilingual children from diverse backgrounds. Wonderful opportunity, but of course, I wanted to be able to have a higher annual salary. So when the opportunity arose for me to work for the public school system, I took it. So I left my first job, went to work for the public schools. Again, great opportunity. But what I found after a couple years is that I was making good money. I was taking care of my family, but I wasn't really spending a lot of time at home with my young children. And I did not like what I saw. So I had to make a hard choice at that point. And I actually decided to walk away from what people term my good job. I'm using air quotes, my good job. And I chose to be a stay-at-home mom for a few years. And what that meant for me is I had to come up with an alternative way of taking care of my family and being there for my kids at the same time. Now, I went through a couple iterations of what that looked like, but ultimately, I became a licensed home care provider for a few years while my children were still small and still at home. I was able to use my education background to teach them and teach other people's children. And that's really how we sustained ourselves through that time, being able, again, licensed home care provider. So I was licensed with the state of Michigan. I had educational credentials, so I was, an educator still, but I needed to be at home with my own kids and be able to get some money coming in. So that worked out the best for me. Well, as soon as my kids were all in school, full day, it was time for me to go back to the workforce. And that's how I ended up in higher education, which is where I've been for the past 15 years. I've been working at a university, again, still in education, still doing what I love, but that was my transition. So your transition may look very different, but you want to be prepared. Understand what you have to offer. And a lot of times, particularly as women, we struggle with our self-worth. We struggle with understanding all the things that we bring to the table. So I really had to do that self-assessment. Look at what I offered, what I have as far as my experiences, my talents, all of that to be able to make those determinations during those hard years where it was really difficult to sustain my family. And ultimately, being prepared means even now, as I go through additional transitions in life, as I look at what's next for me, for my career, understanding what that means to be prepared.
You talked about self-love and the fact that so many women struggle with that.
Yes.
What is your suggestion? What is your advice? Where do we start?
So the first place to start, I believe, is with what you tell yourself. Because a lot of times, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times we have this, I'm old school, I say ticker tape playing in our heads that rehearses this thing over and over again. It could be something that someone called you as a child. It could be something that someone said in school, one of your classmates. It could be any number of things. It could be something that a former partner said to you, but you don't want to internalize those negative things. And if you have internalized it, for whatever reason, recognize it and then record a new ticker tape to play in your head. And what that means for me was, what are the affirmations I need to tell myself every day to let me know, even if I don't believe it in the beginning, but to let me know, this is what I need to know. This is what I need to hear just to be sane for the day, just to be emotionally stable for the day, just to be able to get through my feelings of low self-worth or of sorrow, of grief, or whatever it is that you're experiencing. What are you telling yourself? That is what changed the game for me, because regardless of what other people said when I left home or when I went out to work or other things, what am I telling myself when I wake up in the morning? What am I saying to myself before I go to bed at night? What is it that I'm telling myself that I internalize, that I'm understanding as a part of my story? What is that message?
Dr. D, I struggled a lot with self-worth. For me, my self-worth for a long time came from the validation I got from the people around me or from total strangers. And so when I lived in that mindset, all I wanted to do was please other people.
Yeah.
And so the downside is you forget yourself.
Yeah.
You do everything possible so that other people could like you, could love you, and you lose yourself. And I think
Yes.
that's when I went wrong. That's where I went off the path. And it took me a long time to get back on the path because it took a lot of awareness for me to
Yes.
find it again. What are some signs that women are looking for to make them realize that, okay, enough. I need to start looking at my real self-worth. I need to start loving myself. Because it's such a big deal.
So it is. And what you said resonates so much with me, because even though I wasn't necessarily seeking validation, I was the person that was what's called performance oriented. I was the child that grew up, because, I was a straight A student and I got accolades because of my grades. I wanted to keep those grades up. I wanted to continue to get those accolades for the good grades. So my performance was tied to, again, those words of affirmation that I sought and things of that nature. So I recognize what you're talking about because, I often say I'm a recovering perfectionist, but it's something that you still, you have to check yourself about, because it's so easy to fall back into those patterns, those former patterns of behavior. So you do want to start that assessment. And for me, that assessment came from my anger. Now, people look at me nowadays and they say, you
What?
never get angry. People have not seen that side of me because, I'm healed and whole now, but that wasn't the case, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So mine came from the anger. I was angry if you didn't appreciate all the work that I had done for you. I was angry if you, didn't acknowledge all the wonderful things that I'm doing. So again, I was that people pleaser in a different way, but the same result. I was a people pleaser. I wanted people to understand all of the sacrifices that I was making for them. But at the end of the day, that was my choice. No one forced me to do those things. And I had to recognize what was going on. And for me, it was the anger. My anger got out of control because, most of us have heard this saying, hurting people hurt people. So I was hurting. I wasn't being validated. I wasn't receiving the appreciation that I wanted. And mine came out as anger. And I had to learn. I, read a lot of books and, talked to therapists and all of that. But my anger, what I had to learn is that anger is only an emotion. Anger for me is like a flashing red light or a flashing yellow light that says, hey, something's going on that needs your attention. So that's what changed the game for me. That's what really was that turning point for me, my anger, because I had to recognize that it wasn't. So anger is an emotion. How we choose to deal with that anger is up to us, whether we choose to deal with it in a healthy way or whether we choose to deal with it in an unhealthy way. And too many times I was dealing with my anger in an unhealthy way. And instead of blaming everyone else and pointing the fingers at everyone else, I had to point them back at myself. And that's where it started from.
And you said it. I mean, anytime you pointing your finger at someone else, the three are pointing at yourself anyways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right. And those are some
That's
classic
right.
signs, right, of the anger, bitterness. I have all these like emotions that come to my mind for me that showed up in jealousy, resentment, right?
Yeah.
And so being aware of those emotions and asking yourself, okay, clearly it's not their fault. It's not the weather's fault. It's not the government's fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's what's going on with me, what's going on inside of me.
That's right.
Those are, they're amazing words, Dr. D. As a matter of fact, I don't know too many people, but specifically too many women who don't know about adversity.
Yes.
There's so much strength in us. Can you give us some example of
Yes.
what adversity looks like?
Sure. Adversity, oh my goodness, adversity looks different ways. And I'll give you just a couple examples. For example, at one point in my life, I'll use myself as an example. At one point, again, had irregular income with the daycare, again, based on the number of days the child was coming, things of that nature. But in the midst of that, I had my car stolen. So I went from, having transportation to be able to get me and our kids around, trying to, work to be able to be at home with the kids and be able to have some income coming in, to having my paid for vehicle stolen from in front of my house. So, things like that happen, you know, out of the blue, I'll say. You're not expecting it. Obviously, it's unexpected. And things like that can, just have this ripple effect if you're not prepared for it. And of course, sometimes we try really hard, but we do struggle from paycheck to paycheck. We do have unexpected things happen, and you don't have savings necessarily. So all of those things can happen, especially if you find yourself like I did, kind of building again from the bottom up. So between the car getting stolen, I can talk about times where the utilities were turned off. Again, using the, embarrassing to talk about it now, but using the stove in the kitchen to be able to heat the area where you're sitting and eating and doing homework and all of those things. So, when the utilities are off, not having a vehicle, and, just doing the very best you can. And let's not even talk about house repairs. I was very fortunate that I was able to have a house that was paid for, that I had bought from the city. It was a fixer upper, but again, the countless repairs in the house, from things breaking down and not working properly, to the ceiling leaking because there's a roof leak, and just number of things going on, seeming like simultaneously, one thing after another. And I'll add this, because even though I'm in a much better place financially now, you won't believe the things that have been going on just in the last few days. So we're working from home, we're working remotely. So I'm in my office, in my house, but of course we are doing this a lot more often. So instead of just a couple days a week, or maybe on the weekend being in my home office, I'm here probably 6 days out of the week. So on Thursday, my office chair broke. I'm on a Zoom meeting and I'm sitting there and I hear this pop, and the office chair breaks, and I have to try and steady myself while I'm in the middle of this Zoom meeting. So from the chair breaking on Thursday during the Zoom meeting to Friday, my computer actually going on the fritz. It went out. A blue screen comes up and says that your system may be infected with spyware. And then today, my cell phone goes out. So again, you never really know what's going to happen. Unexpected things happen all around you. And those are some comical things that we can talk about. But again, they're much more serious things that you have to deal with. I can even talk about earlier this year, unfortunately, our son was murdered. And the same week that our son was murdered, my mother had a stroke. And the week after that, my daughter, who is a lupus warrior, found herself in the hospital. And all of this happened within a span of 2 weeks. So you can imagine just the turmoil of emotions and mental, stress and everything else that was going on. So it can go from the very comical things that I just mentioned to, again, very sobering moments in life where you have to deal with mourning and grief and loss. So we handle it, and quite honestly, we make it look easy. We make it look good because, we don't recognize the resilience that we actually have. We just know, okay, I have to keep pushing forward because my kids need me. I have to keep pushing forward because my spouse needs me. I have to keep pushing forward because other people are depending on me. And sometimes just being in that routine of work and, your regular habits keeps you sane.
Wow. I'm at a loss. First of all, my condolences, Dr. D. I am so sorry for your loss. That's a lot. That's a lot of adversity
It is.
to
It
deal
is.
with. And I don't know. I don't know how you do it, Dr. Deep, but I want to ask you, how do you do it? Because people are going to watch this, and some people are going to be in the same boat. Losing a child is, I think, one of the biggest pains a parent can go through. And so how do you get out of that adversity with strength? What helps you?
So when I first started experiencing adversity as a young adult, it was mindset. And that's because I did not have a relationship with God. And I don't know what anyone else's religious beliefs may be, but my faith in God and again, my relationship with God, that's what sustained me. And without that, I don't think that I would probably still be here. It's only my faith in God that sustains me and provides that strength when I'm weak, when I don't feel like doing anything, including eating or showering or anything else, because of everything that's going on around you. So, for me, it's my faith in God and my relationship with God that sustains me. That's what keeps me now. Back then I was I was young. I was, just experiencing life. It was all about mindset then, but now it's my faith in God. It truly is.
For a long time, Dr. D, I did not have a spirituality. I grew up in a country where religion was forced, and so that God did not relate to me at all. So I didn't find my own spirituality once until about 3 years ago, when I was going through a really hard time, and I found it again. And you are right. I think when you have faith, you go through the most difficult situations, even when you're not sure if you're going to make them, but because you have faith, it makes it possible. Faith makes the impossible possible.
Yes. Definitely.
Well, I'm so glad that you have faith and you're here for other people, because there's so many people who need your strength. And so when we're talking about adversity, not undermining any one adversity at all, because everybody goes through difficult situations, and for everyone is different. To live in that mindset of victimhood and living there for the rest of our lives, blaming the world, God, other people, luck for the predicament we're in, is not the best choice, is it?
Right. No, it is not. And actually, there is a quote that I absolutely love. It's a quote from Zora Neale Hurston, and it says, "If you are silent about your pain, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it." And that quote reminds me that it is important to share your story. It's important to tell your story from your perspective and through your lens. Other people on the outside looking in have their own idea of what's going on. But when you tell your own story from your perspective and through your lens, it empowers you. It allows you to own it. It strengthens you somehow. And it allows others to know, hey, if she went through that, if he went through that, then I can make it through what I'm going through.
You're so right. The reason I started Dela's's Voice was exactly this, Dr. D, because I had a story, but for a long time, I didn't have a voice. And once I started sharing my story, I realized that there are so many people who are also suffering with different degrees, but they are also suffering. And together, we have more strength because we give each other hope. Thank you. Every single time I bring someone on here, I'm in awe of the inspiration I get. I mean, I want that for the viewers, but it's like, I'm myself so full
Yes.
of
You as
love.
the host first. That's
Yes. So I want to thank Dr. D. I want to say this with humility. People like you exist in this world to uplift others, but you go through life and the problems that life has with so much grace, and you come out even stronger on the other end, and you're even more ready to serve others.
Thank you.
If someone is watching this and they're going through a rough time and they're looking for that inspiration, maybe they're so beaten down, they just can't get out of bed. Maybe they're just so in so much pain. They can't stand other people's even words of hope. They can't stand other people's laughter, because we can get stuck in that place. Would you get them out of that, please?
What I would say in that situation, I think it's safe to say that we each have found ourselves in a dark place at least once in our lives. I think that's a safe statement to make, that we've each found ourselves in a dark place at least once in our lives. And the thing about being in that dark place is all it takes is that one flicker of light. You know, if you imagine being in a dark room and there's just this one flicker of light, even if it's, a light under the door that you just catch a glimpse of, your eyes are going to automatically go towards that light. And what I encourage people to be for others is that flicker of light. It doesn't have to be deep. It could just be a text message. It could be any number of things. For me right now, it's handwritten notes. Just sending people, how many of us get handwritten notes or handwritten letters anymore? So getting a handwritten note or letter, see, it brightens your face just thinking about it. So being that flicker of light, whatever that looks like for you, for that person connected to you, be that light. It could be just smiling at someone. Because a smile is universal in every language. So just smiling at someone, that lets you know that they see me. I'm not invisible. I matter. It's like with the story that I told about, your voice not mattering, feeling invisible. People just knowing that they're seen, they're not invisible, they're heard, they matter. That's so important. And that could be the step in the right direction to moving out of that dark place and going closer towards that light.
Sometimes we feel, when we have had a loss, that by going on with our own lives, we might forget our loved one. And so some of us forever live in that mourning place, in that grief, and we don't allow ourselves to live the joy that we really deserve to have. How do you suggest people deal with grief?
So actually, I was just sharing earlier, I have 7 tips on grief that I shared on a live stream that I did right after all the tragedy that I experienced earlier this year. So I can just kind of go over those 7 tips for grief. And this is what helped me. This is what helped me personally. I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, or any of those things. These are just 7 tips that helped me personally. So number 1 is it's okay to cry. For me, crying was always seen as a sign of weakness in my family. So I was the one that had to be tough, had to be strong. See, you know what I'm talking about. I did not cry. So I had to tell myself it's okay to cry. Now, I'll still cry in private. You're likely not going to ever see me cry in public, but I still cry in private. And I have to tell myself it's okay to cry. You have to get those emotions out. Number 2 would be don't shut people out. Again, some of this stuff seems so like it would be common knowledge, but these are things that I had to remind myself. Don't shut people out. There are people who really legitimately care about you and they want you to be okay. So again, just letting them know, okay, I just need a few days, or I just need a few hours, or even if they just want to drop something off for you, don't shut people out. Number 3, don't keep busy just to escape grief. So for me, like I said, jumping back into work, jumping back into everything that was going on, that became my go-to because I knew that it was habit. It was like muscle memory. I didn't have to think about it a lot. I just did it. But I needed to be able to process my grief. So just staying busy to escape it doesn't help. The other thing I'll say, and this is not very popular, but time does not heal all wounds. That is not a true statement, because if you've ever been angry with someone, 15 years later, when you see them or hear their voice or hear their name, guess what? It's just like it was yesterday. You're angry all over again. Time didn't help that. You really have to be able to process it in a healthy way. So don't keep busy just to escape grief, and don't think that just time by itself is going to heal anything. It has to be processed in a healthy way. Number 4 is it's okay to ask for help. For me, again, I was the one that really didn't like asking for help. It was a little bit of pride in there, but also, it's hard when you've had to do things for so many people and you've been a people pleaser, or you've been the one who, that performance orientated person who is just trying to get those accolades, trying to get, again, the words of affirmation. You need to be able to know that it's okay to ask for help. Mm-hmm. Number 5, for me, this was very important because I've seen so many people get lost in the process due to substances. So telling myself substances don't make the pain go away, whether those substances are drinking, smoking, drugs, even sex. We use all types of things to try and numb the pain. But when those things are over, when that experience is over, the pain is still there. Again, understanding that it has to be processed, and hopefully you're processing it in a healthy way. Number 6 was taking care of self. Now, this is something we've already talked about, but simple things like getting up and taking a shower, making sure that you're eating something, making sure that you're drinking water every day. All of those things are very important to remember to take care of yourself. The other part of that is being present in today. A lot of us have dealt with different types of grief this year, whether it's been the loss of a personal loved one, someone close to you, or whether you're hearing about a celebrity that has now passed. We've all dealt with grief and mourning in different ways. So being present in the moment, taking advantage and using today for all that it's worth, being present in the moment, not allowing that grief to steal the present from you. And then finally, number 7, honoring their memory. Whatever that looks like for you, honor their memory. For some people, it might be writing a letter. Maybe that's closure for you. For other people, it might be recording a video. For other people, it might be just talking about their memories. I know at some of our funeral services, you used to have an opportunity to get up and just share your memories about them, whether it's a funny story or whether it's just something that's heartwarming. Honoring their memory. These are all ways that help to deal with that grief and loss. And that's what I kind of jotted down, and I've been sharing this year based on everything that I've been through personally.
That's amazing 7 tips. I mean, I think we can all use them, especially, at any time really when we are going through grief, but especially when we're grieving a big loss. And I can relate to so many people when they talk about grieving, because obviously every single person has had to grieve at some point in their time, but also not just the loss of a person that you love, but a lot of us are also grieving loss of jobs right now, right? Loss of a work, and a routine that we were so used to. And so grief comes in so many different shapes and forms. So I want to thank you for the 7 tools. Talking about substances, I thought of, a lot of people, all of a sudden, they go and sit in front of the TV and they binge watch hours and hours of net, because that could be something too they use to, right, to cope with their grief. So that kind of like substance abuse, but it's not, I guess, in a way. Right?
It falls into the same category because you're depending on something, even if it's just getting away for that moment. We all love our marathons, but you do want to escape for that moment, and that's what some of those allow you to do, to be able to escape. But like I said, once that show is over, you've watched the entire series, you've got to deal with the present.
It's true. Because the real pain is still there. It's like you put a Band-Aid over it and just forget it's there. Or it's like driving around with a smiley face on your gas gauge, because you want to ignore how much gas there is in there. How far can you go?
Yes,
So
that's not going to
we
stop you from running out of gas.
right, exactly. So we got to deal with it. We got to deal with it. Thank you. I mean, your talk is amazing. You have spoken on so many stages. You have gone to different universities and have spoken on stages for all sorts of people. What has been your experience with people as far as how they deal with adversity?
The interesting thing is, for a long time, all I knew was my experiences in this country. But the first opportunity I had to be present on an international stage, it was a part of conference. I was one of the speakers, but in being there and listening to other people and talking about their stories, and this was a diversity conference. It was an international diversity conference, but listening to their struggles, listening to some of their concerns. It's universal. It might appear in a different format. It might look differently, but the same issues are at the root. So that was, eye opening for me to just be able to hear, wow, it's not just, what I experience, on my end of the spectrum in my nation, in my city and state, but this is something that people are experiencing around the world. So when I realized that, again, this is a very universal message. It doesn't matter the language, it doesn't matter, how it's expressed, but
Yes, yes. So you're teaching people to look at adversity and not see the weakness that it creates, but really looking at the strength that you can get from that adversity. And there's so much power in that, Dr. D. If we could all remember that, if we could all remember that when we're going through a tough time, that there's a lesson to be learned from this experience, that we're going to come out of it stronger, and we can come out of it better, and like you said, we can share that story and help the world become a better place. There's so much more power in that.
yes, definitely.
And so if there was a big stage where you could reach millions of people, imagine yourself on that big stage right now, and you're talking to millions and millions of people. And they say, Dr. D, you have 2 minutes to leave millions and millions and millions of people with your words of wisdom. What would they be?
If I had just 2 minutes to leave those words of wisdom on a wonderful full stage, I would reference the story that I mentioned earlier about the egg, the carrot, and the coffee bean. And I would ask, will you be the egg, the carrot, or the coffee bean? And whatever you decide, be your authentic self. Like that boiling hot water, adversity has the power to transform. We all have experienced some type of adversity. It may not be all of the things that I talked about that happened to me personally, but we each have had our share of struggles. So, what struggles have you had? How have you navigated those situations to come out on the other side? Do you consider yourself stronger or more resilient because of it? Will you allow your adversity to be the best part of your story? And then I would let them know that whenever you pass a coffee shop or whenever you drink a cup of coffee, remember you can be that coffee bean. My name is Dr. Deandrea Matthews, and it has been my pleasure to share with you today.
And the crowd goes, and we would never forget that story because that is the best analogy ever. Ah, I want to thank you, Dr. D. You are amazing. You are wonderful. You're so powerful. You have dedicated your life to share your story with the world, to bring them hope, to bring them inspiration. And the world is a better place because you're in it. So I want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I am so honored that you spent this time with me on Dela's Voice, allowing me to get to know you and have this conversation. I will forever cherish this talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. Wonderful connecting with you.
Same here. And so many people are watching, and I want to thank every single one of you for your time, for sticking around and hearing the story of hope, of inspiration. And please share this talk with other people, because there's so much gold in here, so much hope. I'm so blessed, Dr. D, so blessed. Thank you so much. So with that, everybody, thank you again for being here, for sharing this experience with us. And I hope that you took from this just as much as I did. Dr. D's email address, so that you can reach her if you would like. Send her lots of love. Give her lots of love. Let her know how much you appreciate it. I see the hearts flying right now. As we're talking, there are lots of hearts. So send her a message. Let her know how much you appreciated her sharing her story. And I want to wish you the best in your endeavors, Dr. D. I'm so excited to be co-authoring with you in a near future in a book that's coming up. And I know you're working on another book, so good luck with that. And I can't wait to hear from you again and hear about all the wonderful things you're doing to impact the world in your own beautiful way. Thank you so much, so very much.
Thank you. The feeling is mutual. I appreciate you so much.
So with that, everybody, thank you again for being here. This has been another episode of Dela's Voice, and I hope we sparked your soul. Till next time.